Welcome into the D2 Baseball Podcast. Robert Fry here today, joined with Cal State San Marcos head coach Jose Garcia. They're off to a great start, 7-1 to begin the season. Coach, how you doing today?
Doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Of course, Coach. And yeah, let's start there. Play your first 6 games at home, win all of them, and then you split a doubleheader at Biola. Talk a little bit about the team's success to begin the season.
Yeah, it's been good. I think offensively, we've started off on the right foot. We have a relatively older group as a whole, with some younger guys, a few freshmen that are going to be some impact players for us. But all in all, I think offensively, we've done a really good job of scoring early and keeping some leads and been able to extend. So that's given us a lot of more opportunities and flexibility to be able to get some more guys in there, give them some game-like reps early on, which I think is going to only benefit us in the long run.
Absolutely. And, talk a little bit about that, just having that success of the offense. You've scored double-digit runs in, I want to say, 5 of the 8 games so far. Talk a little bit about just having that opportunity to, one, be able to score those amount of runs, but then, creating those opportunities to get more playing time for more players.
Yeah, I think the beauty right now is that we're able to do a lot of different things. We have some athleticism. We got some guys that can slug. We got quite a few older guys that have played at a high level, that have seen good pitching and that are tough outs. And so when you have a well-rounded offense like that, it gives us a lot of opportunities. We're not just sitting back and waiting for the 3-run home run. We're applying pressure, whether it be, dropping some bunts down, coming up with a big hit or situational hitting. And truthfully, it just comes down to us just trying to be tough. And I think that's one of the things that you can see when you look at our stats is, our guys aren't going to move their feet. We're going to take every single 90. And that's certainly been a big part for our offense so far this spring is we've been able to maximize getting on base and finding ways to score.
Yeah, and talking a little bit about getting on base and maximizing ways to score. Let's talk about how you've maximized the success in the transfer portal. Is your top 3 hitters are all transfers. Talk a little bit about just the impact of Jacob Embleton, who leads the team in with a 391 average. Stephen Espinoza, who leads the team with 10 hits, and then of course Michael Ryan, who's second in average at 350.
Yeah, those are all guys that have played at the junior college level, that have gotten a ton of reps, that have seen some good competition. And I think, in my opinion, that's one of the things that you need in order to be competitive in our conference, at least. You got to have some guys that have some experience. And so, all 3 of those guys have done a great job. All upperclassmen. Jacob Embleton, he's a pretty dynamic player. I mean, he can run. He can slug a little bit. He's just a really good athlete and plays a really good outfield for us. And he has a good track record, coming to us. That's one of the things that was important to us. Stephen Espinoza, he's got some Division I experience and junior college experience and also some experience in our conference. We got a chance to play against him last year while he was at San Francisco State. So he was a great addition for us, and he's done a really good job for us up the middle, playing short. Just a guy that really steadies our lineup and also defensively has done a great job just stepping in and doing a good job taking care of the ball. So, he's done an incredible job for us. And then Michael Ryan, he comes from Folsom Lake, where they play in a really competitive junior college conference. I mean, arguably one of the best in the state. And so, we knew that we're going to get a guy that can hit a little bit, that is going to give us a tough at bat, and so far he's been able to do that.
And yeah, you mentioned the opportunity of California Junior College and how that can help you translate to the Division II game. How much of an impact has that been in your career as a coach? Recruiting players from a California Junior College and how it can help brand, in this case, Cal State San Marcos.
Yeah, that's been huge. As far as my time at Chico State, I was there for 10 years prior to coming over here, and taking over this program. And since I've been here, this being my 4th year, that's always been a big part of our recruiting strategies, finding guys that, again, have a strong track record. And oftentimes with the high school guys, it's a little bit challenging to know exactly what you're going to get. And you can certainly hit with some kids that are athletic and that are good baseball players. But I don't necessarily think that the competition that they're seeing on a weekly basis maybe meets the standard of even a lot of the junior college leagues in California. And so, when we go and we recruit a guy that's got 300 at-bats under his belt coming in as a junior, I think we know what we're going to get. And that guy has a lot of experience already, and he's much more seasoned and ready to step in and play a big role. And we wouldn't be asking a whole lot from that guy. We'd just be asking him to continue to do what he's been doing for the last 2 years. So that's been something that's been a huge key to our success. Just making sure that we're getting the right guys, right types of players from the right programs.
And, speaking of getting the right types of players from right programs, we'll transition on the pitching side. You grab a guy from D3 Claremont Mudscripts and PJ Wendler, who is impressed so far. Just 3 hits allowed in 11 innings, a whip of 0.64 and a batting average against of 0.86. Talk a little bit about his impact with the team so far.
Yeah, it's been great. He's a grad student. He competed at the D3 level, like you said, but the California Division III conference is they're good, man. They are good. They got some great athletes, incredibly competitive. And so, we knew that we were going to get a guy that had some experience pitching at a high level. And for him, he was excited to be able to continue his career. And he's been big for us, knowing that, we can kind of pencil him in for 5 innings so far. And so he's like you said, he's an upperclassman. He graduated from there. And, he's one of our captains as well, which I think is something that is important, that you have the guys that are tagged as captains that are not only doing the right things on the field, off the field, but to know that those guys are also leading our way, on the field is huge for the rest of the guys to see that, hey, this is the way that he goes about his business, and he's having this level of success. So the buy-in becomes higher.
And yeah, part of the buy-in too is, it helps you as a head coach that you have 3 guys so far that can pencil in and get quality innings out of both. We mentioned Wendler, but Dylan Escobar, Ben Pernetti as well. Talk a little bit about their success, all with ERAs under 4, all with batting average against under 270. How does that help you as a head coach, in terms of, planning out a bullpen for a weekend series when you have guys who can succeed there?
Yeah, it's such a critical thing to know that you have guys that you can lean on the front side. As far as starting pitchers go, especially on a Friday, knowing that you're going to get a guy that's going to be competitive, that's going to throw strikes, that kind of it allows us an opportunity to have a little bit of a better plan and not feel like we have to be so aggressive on that early day. We can maybe save some guys later into the series, and certainly it affects you in the long run. Like when you know that your Friday guy is going to give you a quality start, that just relieves so much stress on your pen, and we can really plan accordingly there. So it really has helped everybody out, knowing that we have 3 legitimate guys. And I think we have more guys that are capable of starting, to be honest with you, that just, haven't had an opportunity to do so. But we're excited about where we're at on the mound. I think, if those guys are capable of coming out, giving us 5, throwing strikes, then we're capable of winning some ball games with just kind of how we're swinging it right now.
Yeah, and especially with how you're swinging it right now. But it's also important, for the back end of games, what's the impact been like with guys like Jack Clark, Mason Ali, who was a impact transfer by us listed. Also, Dylan Schmidt's done well in 3 1/3 scoreless. Talk a little bit about just having the back end of that bullpen solidified for you.
Yeah, I think we're still trying to figure out what those are going to look like. We're only 8 games in, and so we're still trying to feel out, like, who's going to serve what role. it is nice to know that I think that we have a lot of guys that are capable of doing a lot of different things, and we have a different looks out of the bullpen as well, which I think is good. And the large majority of those guys are upperclassmen transfers, with the exception of a few guys that are younger. And one guy like that you mentioned was Jack Clark. Jack didn't give up his first earned run until after his 21st inning or so, the last series of the year, and as a true freshman. And so he got some valuable experience last year in some high leverage situations. And, he's kind of parlayed that into getting a pretty big piece for us for this upcoming spring. In what capacity is he going to pitch in? I don't know yet. But he's been, back there when we need him to potentially close a game out. When there's a tough lefty at the plate, he's certainly stepped in, but he can get us some high leverage outs. And so, we're excited about him being back as a true sophomore, and he's got a high ceiling, of course. But yeah, we have quite a few different guys that I think are capable of coming in and getting outs for us, which is going to be critical for us this year.
And yeah, speaking of critical, we talked a little bit off camera about the dismissal of 2 programs from the CCAA in this season. So you had a little bit of scheduling challenges. So looking at your upcoming schedule, you play Cal State LA in a non-conference series, and then you host Simpson the following weekend. Talk a little bit about just having to navigate kind of this schedule, especially playing less conference games.
Yeah, it's been hard. That's somewhat one of those things that you don't have full control over. I think a year ago, right around January, was when we got word that San Francisco State was no longer gonna carry baseball, and then Sonoma State's athletics was getting shut down. So, those are 8 games that we have to account for this year. And for our conference schedule this year, we have a bye to start. So we had 6 weeks that we had to kind of figure out to begin our year to try to find games. And quite frankly, there's not a whole lot of teams that are looking for games in the 4th week of February, because they're all starting conference. And so we've done our best to get games in, and playing a conference opponent in a non-conference series was just one of those things that's just we had to do. Not necessarily because we wanted to, but I think it certainly is one of those things that benefits our conference and both teams. We just got to get games in. And I think we also have some financial limitations that we have to deal with as well. And so we have to be mindful of that. But at the end of the day, I think we're all trying to get our games in whatever fashion that may be. And if it's, D2 opponents, great, that's ideal. But we've also had to fill in with some NAI opponents as well. But it's all about just trying to get those 50 games in, trying to continue to get our guys experience and build our resume, of course.
Of course. And, the part of it too is, with this schedule, right? You mentioned Cal State LA, but having that break in between, something you may not have experienced, but, talk a little bit about kind of what that could look like for the team, kind of like giving them a breather after 11 games, but 2, like making sure they stay ready for the next wave of the season.
Yeah, that's one of those things that we have to just really keep at the forefront of our planning. Really, is trying to make sure that guys are continue to build up on the mound. Guys aren't losing innings and maybe revert back a little bit on the mound. We want to continue to stretch guys out and have them feel comfortable. It is, when we're talking about 2 weeks, it could be a challenge for a guy to take 2 weeks off and then expect that guy to come out and give us his best 6 innings. So that's just our responsibility to make sure that we're planning ahead, planning accordingly. We'll be fitting in some inter squads and whatnot as best we can and giving guys some live action. But like you said, it's also going to be nice to be able to make sure that we're not putting too much stress on these guys early on in the season, especially once we get into March, where the CCA schedule can become grindy and we're playing 4 games every weekend, and we won't have a bye. So since we are starting our season with a bye, we won't have that luxury in the middle the spring. So we're going to take advantage of it as best we can right now and give these guys an opportunity to get some rest and gear up, but at the same time making sure that they're sharp. And part of that is just giving them as many game-like reps as we possibly can.
And Coach, the final question I have for you mentioned about the grind of the CCAA, one of the toughest conference in Division II baseball, but it gets even tougher, especially with the lesser of the number of teams in conference. The lesser of teams in the conference tournament. Talk a little bit about just the heightened importance of each game in CCAA conference play this year.
Yeah, no doubt. We were pretty used to having 40 games within conference and losing 2 opponents. That cuts us down to 32. So there's just a lot more sense of urgency, of course, making sure that every game matters. Not that it didn't before, but certainly, you want to do your best to get into that into the postseason, into the conference tournament. But also our conference is just so strong, top to bottom. There are no easy weekends. Every team has just gotten competitive, more and more competitive every single year. And the parity is as high as it's ever been. So, if over the history of our conference in the last few years, you can just see that, it doesn't matter who you're playing, like anybody can be anyone. It's not necessarily so top heavy as it once was. And so we're excited for the challenge. I think it's great for our conference because it shows the strength of it. And so when regional rankings come about, I would hope that that's something that's considered, knowing that there are, there isn't a huge gap between the top and the bottom teams. I mean, you can kind of just look at so far our conference records of each team in our conference, and everyone's playing some competitive baseball. We're all playing non-conference games with other opponents, but there's a lot of good baseball being played all across our conference. And so that's something that, we're going to obviously try to do our best when conference rolls around, but we also got to make sure that we're taking care of the games ahead of us right now. And so first things first, we're looking ahead to that non-conference Cal State LA game. But at the end of the day, the CCA conference is a grind. It's a tough conference, no doubt. And so, we're excited for the challenge.
Coach, thank you so much for taking out the time to chat and talk about the team success early on. Wish you the best of luck, and hopefully CCAA play goes well. And then, we can talk further down the line and see, hey, maybe we can get a replication of the 2024 season.
Yeah, right on. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate you.
Yep. And that is Jose Garcia, head coach at Cal State San Marcos. We'd like to give a big thank you to all of our regional tier Patreon members. We couldn't make it to the 9th inning without the support of all of you. You're the real MVPs, hitting a home run for the team every single time. Thank you.